All right, so thank you so much for inviting us to talk about this. I'm the Hydrography Management and Planning Lead at USGS in the National Geospatial Program. The hydrography group is organized in the National Geospatial Program under the same group as 3DEP. And so I work for Vicki Lucas, who you guys all know, and work really closely with Sue Budo and others over on the elevation side.
Becky, can I interrupt you for just a moment? We are not seeing a slide deck at this point.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Thank you so much.
No problem. How is that? Are you seeing Hawaii, or are you seeing other slides?
I am now seeing a title slide, it looks like, that says Our Future in 3D.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Sorry about that.
No worries.
You might prefer to see the Hawaii background instead, but we'll stick with this one. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about our future in 3D, and I'm going to talk about both the 3D National Topography Model as well as our launching of the 3D Hydrography Program, which is really exciting for all of us. It's a lot of work now and in the future, but we are really very excited about it. So I'm going to start with the 3D topography model because this is really the unifying concept for moving forward with a new 3D hydrography program. So the 3D topography model, or we call it the 3D NTM, is designed to deliver the terrestrial component of the 3D nation vision, which is a vision that both USGS and NOAA have been working on, and you guys have probably heard about it before, related to mapping the nation's elevation from the tops of the mountains to the depths of the waters. And what we're really looking forward to doing with the 3D NTM is integrating national elevation and hydrography data sets to model the nation's topography in 3D. And 3D NTM, like much or most or all of the work we do with 3DEP and National Hydrography Datasets, it's based in extensive requirements and benefits documentation. And this is to maximize return on investment for a broad range of business uses. And so this includes things like FEMA Future Flood Risk Data and Risk Rating 2.0, the National Water Model, Clean Water Act, the National Landslides Preparedness Act. The 3D NTM will not only focus on data and information, but also provide universal discovery and sharing of water information as the geospatial foundation for the Internet of Water. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. With multiple new vintages of data coverage and increased accuracy, the 3D NTM will enable new and emerging applications. So there's 4 development tracks for building the 3D NTM. The first track's focused on our efforts to complete national baseline data sets for both the 3D elevation program for 3DEP and also for a data set we've been working on for a few years on the hydrography side called the NHD Plus High Resolution. Secondly, we've been working already to pilot integration of hydrography and elevation data through projects to acquire inland bathymetry data and also projects to derive hydrography data from elevation data. I'll go over the hydrography from elevation data pilots in more depth in just a bit. This second track is informing the third development track, which is our major effort to design and implement the next generation of integrated data for elevation and hydrography. And then the last track is really more future oriented. And in this track, we're researching and developing a 3D data model that will truly integrate elevation and hydrography data along with other layers of the national map. So today, what I'm going to focus on is the hydrography portion of this third track. I'm going to go over the 3D NTM call for action part 1 3D Hydrography Program. This document has been in the works for about a year now. We sent it out for external review this summer, and we've gotten comments back, and I'll go a little bit more through that in a bit, but right now we're assuming that we will get this out for publication maybe next winter. It's a lengthy publication process at USGS, but we are really rolling with working through the external comments. We had lots of comments from NSGIC, and thank you so much to everyone who provided comments, NSGIC member groups, NSGIC itself, as well as anybody who just took the time to open the document and take a read through with it, even if you didn't have time for comments. Working forward with this document is going to be critical for us to capture all the information we need, because, you know, we're not going at this alone. We're doing all of this with all of you guys. So it is really important that we have your inputs. The second part of the call for action will focus on the next generation of 3DEP. And this will be available for review by the end of next fiscal year is the goal. So let's start with just a bit of background. How did we end up here? Why are we launching a whole new program? What's working, what's not? The NHD portfolio of data sets you can see there on the right of the National Hydrography Dataset, the Watershed Boundaries Dataset, and the NHD Plus High Resolution, all which are managed at USGS. They're the most current and comprehensive data of the nation's surface waters and drainage areas. And they include millions of features, including 9.4 million miles of stream network and over 8 million water bodies and 130,000 nested hydrologic units. So it's quite a large data set. These data were originally digitized from 7.5-minute topo quads, but over the last 20 years, both the NHD and WVD have leveraged local knowledge through a stewardship program that includes 41 states and Washington, D.C. Couldn't have done this without the local knowledge, but there are some issues with taking an approach like this that's a bit more opportunistic. The updates aren't uniform for these data sets, and there are lots of issues that are persistent. So in some of these areas, there have been no updates in 40 years. So it's basically the original data from the topographic maps. Also, the approach that we've taken with a very open model has decreased national consistency over time. There are some issues with the connectivity of the NHD network and some delineation issues in the WVD. And really, kind of most importantly, the data don't align well with new 3DEP data. And this is an issue when you particularly look at any kind of applications related to flooding or modeling, where you really need these two data sets to work together in concert to be able to utilize the power of them, basically. So there are lots of benefits to updating national hydrography data sets. In 2016, the Hydrography Requirements and Benefits Study was released, and it documented 420 mission-critical business uses with 23 federal agencies, all 50 states, 8 tribal governments, and 3 national associations. And I believe what's missing from that list is there also were at least one territory, I think, participated. The study found that hydrography data are essential to a broad range of critical applications that you can see below listed, such as conservation, stream, river and stream flow management, infrastructure and construction management, water quality, flooding, of course, agriculture, water resource planning, ecosystem management, and urban and regional planning. And the current NHD in its form, where it's mapped at about 1 to 24,000 scale, kind of across the nation generally, it was found to bring about 538 million in annual benefits. But the study also found that if a modernized 3D-enabled hydrography program were enacted, it could provide over $1 billion annually in benefits if all of the user requirements were met. So we have been planning now the 3D hydrography program because hydrography derived from elevation offers a solution. 3DHP will provide national consistency while meeting local needs. And the goal is to acquire new hydrography standardized to align vertically, horizontally, and temporally to 3-depth data, as well as many other improvements I'll talk about in a moment. And this really supports national and regional level issues like flooding and contaminant spills and others. And it supports more accurate and updated modeling and analysis capabilities, as I mentioned before. In addition to the data, we will develop an infrastructure, which is a fancy name for an information infrastructure to support sharing of water data using that data as a framework. The data acquisition process will follow 3-depth best practices, including coordinated governance and data acquisition, and we'll be building on decades of work and concepts from current hydrography products. Again, thank you to all of the states who've been participating in the program with us for many years. We couldn't have done this without you, and we can't do it without you in the future. So when we looked at a new program, we considered 3 scenarios. The first is the status quo. What if we just kept doing what we were doing? It's got the lowest cost, but it leaves major needs unmet. The second is to derive hydrography from 1 meter 3-depth DEMs. And this really does require significant investment across the board, but it meets the most needs, or it meets most of the needs, and it has a high level of monetary annual benefits. And the third that we looked at was to derive hydrography from 0.5 meter 3-depth DEMs. And that scenario meets nearly all needs, pretty much all of the needs that were in HRBS. But it has the highest cost without very much additional monetary benefit. And also, of course, there's far less data available at the 0.5 meter level in collected through 3-depth than we have currently available as 1 meter DEMs. So we have chosen scenario 2, and that's what we move forward with in the call for action document. The scenario is very ambitious and it requires careful planning and support from partners to be successful, but we really do believe it is the right step forward. So building the 3D hydrography program. As I mentioned before, 3DHP will follow 3-depth, and it'll follow it in a lot of different ways. We'll establish governance that's similar to 3-depth and coordinated with 3-depth governance. And that includes partnerships and acquisition plans, and also just working with groups like NSGIC to coordinate in particular projects for outreach. Also, we are already working to add 3DHP to the 3-depth broad agency announcement. Rather than doing a separate broad agency announcement, it's important to note that we don't have funding available for a 3DHP BAA, but we are working on the kind of background paperwork that's needed so that if we receive funding in order that we can partner with, that we'll be ready to do that. Also, we're looking for 3DHP to have contracted acquisition of 3DHP data. And this is a real shift for hydrography. We have been previously doing edits in-house at USGS, and states have been doing edits within their states and moving them into the NHD. Federal partners as well have been doing updates. And so this is a slightly different model for 3DHP, but a very similar model for 3-depth. And while we will primarily look at using the USGS geospatial products and services contracts for acquiring new data, we'll also allow for cooperative data acquisition and contributed data. And we will provide current and additional 3DHP specifications, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. So diving into the data for a moment, this is pretty weedy, but for those of you who like to get your fingers right into the data, I thought I'd cover a bit of this. So the 3DHP data sets are really going to be a stack of interoperable hydrography data that are aligned by virtue of being derived from a common elevation source. So we're looking at a stream network that includes water bodies that are derived from 3 1 meter QL2 or better lidar DEMs, as I mentioned earlier. That stream network includes Z values, which really gives it the 3D enabled ability. Excuse me, and of course IFSAR, 5 meter IFSAR in Alaska. Hydrologic units, including catchments with nested drainage areas created using the DEM and 3D stream network. Raster surfaces, such as hydro-enforced or hydro-conditioned DEMs. This is new for us. These are not data that we have provided in the past, but these are really critical and important for modeling of things like flooding that I mentioned earlier. A lighter, more simplified data model that is focused on being able to attach data from different users more easily, and making the data available as individual layer downloads and map services where you kind of reach in and grab what you need, but also annual releases that can be used where the data has been generalized for national level applications. I'm not going to walk through all of these requirements. This table came from the call for action document if you'd like to see it in more detail. But I did want to note that when I talk about 3D HP and moving to 3D HP data, it's not just the elevation piece. There are a lot of other improvements that we're talking about doing that are related to things like spatial accuracy and reflecting more of a complete hydrologic cycle, stream flow permanence, connectivity of the network, maintenance of the data, and that these tie directly back to needs that we found in HRBS. I think that that's really key to mention. So if we look at level of detail as an example, the highest level, if we can accomplish with 3D HP, holding the highest level of detail available for, let's say, the stream network. So you are a municipality, you would like your stream network to be very dense. We can hold that for you, but then we can build a generalization functionality so the EPA, who needs to use these data for a national analysis, can also use it. Well, if we do that, we meet 100% of the mission critical activities in HR that were expressed in HRBS. So we really did tie this program back to what we've learned from the users. A little bit about the better accounting of the water cycle. There are just some additions that we are planning here, or slight tweaks to the way we do things now. Also, one is connections to groundwater. So we do not believe that we would read in groundwater models anything, or data that relates to groundwater, but rather that we would create connections or links out to models and that sort of thing. Also, we've been working actively with the National Wetlands Inventory to understand where our data sets kind of miss the mark together. Where are we overlapping? Where are we leaving gaps? How do our data sets not really function together right now so we can correct some of that going forward? We're looking at how we enhance the inclusion of engineered hydrologic systems. So this includes stormwater mapping. I do not believe we will be bringing in full stormwater systems. We really need to look at what's the Goldilocks level here of mapping a stormwater system into 3D HP data sets. But with that said, we also can't have the water mapping of the United States hit a large city and just completely disappear. So we're going to be doing some research into how is it best to map those features into the data sets. Also, culverts are a hot topic when it comes to elevation derived hydrography, and we're going to need to figure out how those work in the data set too. We're also looking at greater compatibility with other data sets such as superficial geology, soils, land cover, and others. So how do we align better with them? And we have current pilots for inland bathymetry going on for next gen 3DEP as well right now. Just a bit about the infrastructure that I mentioned before. I'm not going to go real in depth with this, beyond saying it is a core part of what we're looking at doing to be able to expose water data or water information that is important to many people in the community. We want to help people take their data, whether that be water quality data, fisheries data, whatever information you have, and map it against the stream network so it has the right kind of address or location on the stream network, and then enable the cataloging of those data and search and discovery. So not that we would own the data, but rather that we create a platform or a means for others to attach their information and then to share that data and for others to discover it. This is related to a larger concept, the Internet of Water, which is, if you're interested in sharing water data, that is something worth looking up and learning more about. And a quick example of why this is such a need. So the Water Quality Portal has an implementation of kind of like the infrastructure. And in August of 2015, the USGS was asked to provide all historical water quality data from NWIS downstream of a mine spill. It was the Gold King mine in Colorado. And it took a team of database and GIS experts about 2 weeks to compile all of the information needed, all of the water quality information that might be in a file cabinet somewhere. But since then, the Water Quality Portal has pulled in all of those digital records, referenced them to the stream network, and has a system that's kind of a precursor to the infrastructure for search and discovery. And this same search of information can now be done in 2 minutes instead of 2 weeks with multiple people. So we're really looking at improvements like that for all water data across the country. Just a few more slides here on what we've been up to lay the foundation for moving forward. One of those is doing pilots, as I mentioned at the very beginning, to derive hydrography from elevation. The goals of these pilots have really been to build inspection or validation procedures for acquired data and to assess and create specifications. It's also been to understand costs and issues with contracting, and we're really still zeroing in on where costs are going to be for elevation-derived hydrography. There's quite a large range of potential costs for this right now, and we're just kind of, we need to do more pilots, and the more data we can kind of get on that, the better. There have been 3 major pilots, and then others are going to kick in here pretty soon. So one several years ago that was in 5 areas across the US, some in Alaska, and then one in Southeast Texas that's becoming much more complete. We've got another one that will be starting up in Oregon, kind of Oregon and Oregon-California border, and then a few more projects too coming on closer on the East Coast. So we're learning more every day about that. Also, what we learned from especially the first pilots with the 5 areas, we rolled into current specifications. These are really, the specifications explain, they give the information on how do you derive, how do you structure and take data derived from elevation in such a way that you can include it into the NHD. And these will be the first 3D HP specifications. I'm sure they'll change a bit as they morph into 3D HP, but there'll be others to follow, of course. We'll need more specifications on different things. And it's important to note that specifications are going to evolve over time as we improve our understanding of the needs of users and technologies change. So these aren't static, but they are incredibly important, especially for contracting. Also, we validate we will need to validate the acquired 3D HP data. We have been working on inspection processes over the last few years with Alaska in particular, and we're starting to in CONUS now. And again, these are going to grow and evolve over time, but we've made very good progress on them. And again, more evolving. We're doing a lot of evolving today, but stewardship will also evolve over time. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 41 states and Washington, D.C. with stewardship agreements that are MOUs. We have other states that are highly active that don't have MOUs. So there's quite a few states working to update the NHD and the WBD right now. Going forward, local knowledge of hydrology will continue to be critically important. I think we'll see it shift in, less of a hands-on active editing role and more partnerships for acquisition and notation of corrections using an online application that we can go back in then on the USGS side and make corrections if needed to data. We are actively beginning research for 3D HP. We'll be working on data model research this fall. We'll also in the future be looking at things like bridging from current data to future data. How do we provide that bridge? Building data pipelines, generalization and multi-scale data products, and using AI and HPC to lower costs and increase automation. I'm not going to read through all of these milestones. They're in the call for action document, but it's more to say we've got a very large list. This is even a high level list, but we're really starting to kick into mode here in 21 and 22 and off into 23 with moving forward with this program. Estimated costs. Again, costs are very difficult to estimate right now, but we are right now looking at a community overall investment of about $676 million over 9 years. And that starts with kind of an entry year, and then a lot of this blue here is data acquisition and validation. Mostly the purple is the extended or additional kind of feature work that we plan to do. This is taking care of the data here in yellow, and this is kind of spinning down that legacy program over a number of years. So you really see a ramp up in data acquisition, and then the data will be processed out. We think that that will take, 9 years, but I can't give you a start date right now, and we'll see, how long that really takes. That's just an estimate so we can get going. Like 3D HP is a community-wide goal, and so it depends on significant investment by partner organizations to meet their needs, to meet all of your needs. And USGS will manage 3D HP on behalf of the broader community who provide the majority of funding. And roles, we're still kind of working on this, this graphic here. I got some good comments back from the review on it, but just to note that you don't just see, again, USGS on here or federal partners. State and locals critical, private sector's critical, and users have a big involvement in this program. So next steps for us: complete and publish the 3D National Topography Model call for action 3D Hydrography Program document, again, hopefully by the winter, maybe by the NSGIC mid-year. Educate and build partner and user support through the NSGIC 3D HP for the Nation project. If you are not involved with the interest group or the working group for that right now, track down Linda and Phil and get involved. We've been having great presentations so far from a whole host of states. Also, we're going to continue doing pilot projects. We'll be working on a data acquisition plan, including the BAA. We are beginning research, as I mentioned, and we will continue to build out prototypes of the 3D HP infrastructure. And that is my last slide. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Becky. That was awesome and really, really informative. We unfortunately don't have time for questions, so I would encourage everybody to continue with my NSGIC.